everybody. Welcome to the Quantum Bridge today. You might hear my voice is a little croaky, but as they say, the show must go on. And we have a new guest with us today. I will pass over to Casper to introduce them for us.
Wow, very good, my friend. Nice to see that you turned up, and as you say, the show must go on. But I hope you feel better, and I want a whole load of well wishes in the comment section for
it's been almost 2 weeks now of
with your ascension symptoms, right, as you're moving into higher dimensions and
upgrading
upgrades and downloads. Okay, anyway, without further ado, we're very pleased to have another new guest with us today. In this case, it's a guy called Simon King. And I'm going to pass across to Simon, as well as saying hello to him, obviously, to sort of get us started by giving a bit of a sort of mini background to him and what he's doing at the moment and what brought him to that point. So hi, Simon, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I am a health practitioner, so I trained in chiropractic, but a few years ago, what I was into was so far divorced from chiropractic, and there's a problem in this country that says that if you want to be registered as a chiropractor, you have to pay a fee, and then they have quite a lot of control over what you can say and do. And I didn't want to be judged by more inexperienced peers, and so I'm no longer registered, and that involves me in legalized censorship, which means I can't call myself a chiropractor, so I don't. And so I'm a health practitioner, health professional, and I've been seeing patients for 36 years, and I have developed a way of looking at health that is quite different, I think, and but quite commonsensical, quite straightforward and easy to understand once you have a bit of background, a bit of information. So and then I've trained lots of chiropractors, over probably 1,000 health professionals in this way of thinking, and I still practice it. And this has been now 24 years since I developed put the icing on the cake of this theory. I wrote a book about it, and the book was subtitled "A New Theory About What's Wrong with You and What to Do About It." And it was called Live Without Pain, because basically most of my work has been about optimizing physical performance.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you for that sort of background. It does lead me to the question about did you always have that sort of feeling and that sort of railing against the system, so to speak, and the thing of this sort of confined paradigm, or is that something that emerged over the years that you were doing your practice?
Well, it sort of evolved over time. I started off using a lot of testing of muscles, but not really understanding why. And then I got to the top of my field in muscle testing. And at that stage, I was more and more aware of this thing called evidence-based medicine, which was becoming more and more popular. And so actually, I went and studied for 2 years. I did a master's degree in health sciences research. So the ability to do evidence-based research, because I really thought that might be the key. And I got through that, and it took a few years, as it does. You go in and you just learn what you need to know. And it takes a few years to realize where the holes are in that theory. And I think we all go through this with basic undergraduate education. You learn the knowledge so that you can pass the test, but its application to the real world takes you a while to assimilate, what works and what doesn't. And that's why commonly, people would say that over half of, a lot of what you've learned is obsolete in three to 5 years after you go to university. But what happens then is you learn which bits are important and what you're trying to achieve. And then I went back to the textbooks about 2000. I went back to the textbooks and really tried to understand how muscles actually functioned and their relationship to the nervous system. And when I finally understood that, I put this paradigm together. I said, I wonder if that's how bodies actually work. I wonder if muscles are actually the start of the nervous system, actually generating most of the input into the nervous system. And I wonder if I had that point of view, whether I could look at patients differently. And that's when I really went for, where are the weaknesses with this person? Not what disease do they have, but where are the weaknesses that stop them getting better? And if I could, and then it turned into, well, life is just a series of forces that we have to survive and thrive against, and that depends on our strength. And where does that strength come from? It comes from nerve control of our body, especially our muscle system. And so this link between the muscles and the nervous system became my primary focus, and it's never left me because it works so well. You can work out so much from finding people's weakest links, and when you fix their weakest link, their whole system responds very positively.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole sort of maxim of healthy body, healthy mind and whatever, that seems to be coming more to the fore anyway now. I think this is testament to sort of what you're just touching on at the moment. In the world of sort of certainly weight training, for example, and I wrote the biography of Dorian Yates, who's a six-time Mr. Olympia, so he knows, quite a bit about how the body functions and how muscles work. Given that's the premier, for those that don't know, that's the premier bodybuilding competition in the world. And I think he and others would now sort of posit at least the idea. I don't know how much this is backed up or not, really, in the sort of more traditional medical field. But certainly there's a lot of people now who are touching on this idea that, if you doing all these things like brain training exercises with sort of books and doing all sorts of things that strain the brain evidently and keep it moving may not be as beneficial, or maybe an adjunct, but not necessarily the core beneficial thing around just moving and getting or maintaining strength or building strength and building, other things like balance and all the other things in your system. Things that arts like Tai Chi and I'm sure yoga have some element of as well, maybe a lot of it at some level, but certainly this thing of actually moving and strengthening the skeleton and the muscles and the tendons and whatever appears to do something also to do with metabolism and blood flow, but actually helps to keep off things like whether it's Alzheimer's or whatever. I'm not making that claim, by the way. I'm just, these are things that I'm hearing. And I just wondered how they either do or don't correlate into your view of the world.
So there's a thing we need to understand, really. We've got these 86 billion neurons in our nervous system, and they're all firing 50 to 1500 times per second within our brain. That's an awful lot of nerve messages running around our brain, right? And when people think that when they move their arm, it's the brain sending a message, but you have to remember there's no real neurons in the brain that are producing anything. So the brain is a processing center. Each of those 86 billion neurons is connected to 10,000 other neurons. And so where does all that information come from? How are we running our nervous system? And it turns out that most of especially the physical nervous system, the movement control system, starts in our muscles. That's the beginning of the proprioceptive effect. So proprioception, the ability to know where you are in space or where your body is, most of the messages for that are coming from the muscles themselves. And the reason we need that is to be able to control our strength, to control our movements. So any movement-related issues have started in the muscle. Well, no, that's not quite true. But the muscles control the input to the nervous system. Interestingly, there's a big effect from the teeth into the nervous system. So there are two types of nerve sensors in our body. The ones in the skin are going to react to instantaneous touch or pressure or pain or whatever.
Or heat or what?
Cold or hot, yeah. That we have sensors in our skin, and the skin is also related to our nervous system. But the sensors in our muscles are operating continuously. They will always, every muscle is inputting information into the nervous system, and that's how we can be aware of our movements. And it's instantaneous. It's happening between 20 and 50 times per second into our system. And then motor neurons are providing output to every one of our muscles, even at rest, of 50 times per second. So there's as much current flowing to every muscle as there is in the electric lights circuits. And so it goes from 50 at rest to about 500 times per second at full belt. So if you had to use maximum strength, you would be outputting from your motor neurons at 500 times per second. Now, my thing is that what if you need 500 times a second to get you to maximum, but your output is only now 400 times? that's going to leave you vulnerable to injury and illness, because we know that the stronger you are, from a very big study in 2008 and about 60 other studies, all prove that the stronger you are, the longer you live, and the less health and the less disease you suffer. And so this getting strength is really important, but we have to understand that strength is starting in the muscles, going into the nervous system, and then comes out via the nervous system, having been processed. The muscular, I mean, of course, we have some voluntary control, but so much of our muscle action is actually totally involuntary, and our nervous system is handling that through reflexes that we have very little conscious control over.
Can I just jump in for a second
Yeah.
on that? By the way, this is fascinating stuff, so thank you. I'm really glad now that even more glad that you're here. But, you know, things that work on that, on different aspects of the nervous system and sort of gaining a more subtle control or being more aware of that, like yoga, like Tai Chi, like Qigong, and even the whole aspect of Qi itself. So, and various energies, well, that's a very blanket term, but various energies moving in and throughout the body, and maybe even beyond the physical, the perceived physical body. Those sort of practices, which might sort of come into the realms of things like Pilates and other stuff as well, but really those Eastern traditions, have you incorporated or have you found the wisdom from those helpful in your current work and what you've just touched on? Or is this much more about what has sort of intuitively and in terms of science and your observations come to you? Is there a blend there, or is this very much your history plus doing it has created your method?
Well, I don't like relying on my intuition. You know, when I started out,
I
would
thought
try
you might
that.
not.
And because I have to teach this, I have to defend it. Everything is like, I like textbook medicine. I like going back to the textbooks and saying, this is what we know, right? Now, the trouble with medicine, well, one of the many troubles with medicine is there are two types of medicine. Okay, so the one type is the one that deals with reality and substance. This is the chemistry and the biology and the physiology. The other type is what they call clinical medicine, and this is the realm of statistics. This is the statistical studies, and where you use statistics to try to get closer to the truth using populations. But that's like going to a casino. This is a lot more probability-based, not reality-based. So I want all of my stuff based in hard physiology that everybody can understand, and it's irrefutable. So one of the things that I've got into is understanding the effects of the withdrawal reflex. Now, this has been known since 1906. But it's sort of absolutely ignored by everybody in medicine and alternative medicine. So the withdrawal reflex is where you withdraw from something that's bad for you. So you try to touch a hot iron, you can't. Now, no matter how much you train, no matter how determined you are, you cannot put your hand against that hot iron. You will always contract some muscles and therefore inhibit the opposite muscle. So every time we move, contract one muscle, inhibit the other. You try and touch a hot iron, or even you're going to pull away, no matter, you know, how much training or conscious thought you put into it. Now, this is very important because it's not just a noxious substance that's going to make you pull away. It's also the tickling. You know, if somebody tickles you, you have to withdraw from it. So our skin is very sensitive to irritation. And so if we get a nail in our foot, we can't walk normally, partly due to the pain, but partly because our body says, if you put your foot down, you're going to cause much more damage. We're going to stop you doing that. We're going to contract your flexors and inhibit your extensors. And you think, okay, we all sort of get that. And we know that the only proper treatment for a nail in the foot or a knife in the leg is to take the thing out, right? You don't need a randomized control study to tell you that. And yet people will go and put a nail in their nose or their ear and their belly button and think that it has no effect. But it has an enormous effect, because when you put a nail through your skin, your brain goes, oh, and tries to get away from it. Or a nail through your ear, it goes, oh, and tries to get away from it. And this contracts some muscles and inhibits others, contracts some muscles, inhibits others. And then you've destabilized the input that comes from your muscles to your central nervous system. And now those muscles are not able to keep you safe from your environment. And you know, but they don't cause pain initially. You know, you can have weakened neck muscles for years and have maybe the odd little episode of pain, but it wouldn't really affect you until you need those muscles to operate, like in a car accident. And so somebody with weakened neck muscles and me in the same car, I'm going to be better in 2 weeks, and then not going to be better in 3 years. And this is the classic sort of whiplash scenario, because muscles are not able to protect themselves from injury, and we need our muscles also to help heal injury, so that even after the incident, we need our muscles to splint our vertebrae and our bones so that the joints heal again. And if that's not happening, then the injury can last and last and become repetitive, and then you need to go for treatment forever.
Yeah.
Simon, can I just ask on that note?
Yeah.
Is that why we sometimes say, you know, we pull something and say, oh, well, I haven't used that muscle for a while. In layman's terms, we might, I don't know, we reach over and open a window and it throws your whole back out, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, I haven't used it for. You think, why was it that something simple rather than trying to lift up tons of bags that maybe you do at work all day, but or shopping?
Well, it's often not those conscious activities that hurt us, is it? It's the one time that we've been down to pick up a pencil that we've done hundreds of times before, and that's the time when it catches us. Well, that's basically the inhibition that's probably been there for a while, and eventually your body needs that muscle to fire, and it doesn't fire, and then you've got problems. And of course, this inhibition reflex can't be fixed with exercise. This is something that goes beyond exercise. And I always say the reason I need to make you stronger is so that you can exercise. But we're not going to fix it with exercise. We're going to fix it by fixing the bad input to your nervous system, and then you can exercise quite safely and happily.
I was just going to say that it puts a lot of people off building muscle, the fact that they've already got a damaged knee or a bad shoulder or an ankle that's not blah, blah, blah. So effectively what happens is they're gradually losing muscle mass anyway. And obviously, you know, in terms of hormones and metabolism and all these things, you know, as we age, there is this thing of losing muscle mass potentially anyway. And then if you've got some of these damages and you don't get them sorted out, you can't. It's not just that, you know, it's all this thing of you've got lazy, or, you know, well, it might just be the fact that you know, your body tells you every time you try to do a squat, for example, that your knees are in terrible pain. Well, unless you fix the problem with the knee, then you can't build the quadricep and all the other, you know, so it becomes self-fulfilling, really.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And and people think like the whole society tells you that what you must do is exercise. But there are many people who just get injured every time they exercise, or they can't continue. And they blame being sedentary. But a lot of the people that are sedentary because they can't.
Yeah, that's
exercise.
right.
They're not sedentary because they want to be sedentary, right? They actually know that they can't exercise. And that's because their nervous system is not able to control their muscular system properly.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. I know that time always slips away very quickly, so I do want to touch on the book a little more. And I know one aspect of that, which you have sort of mentioned for a second, was this thing to do with the teeth. So to do, I presume then, to do with dentistry as well, and what is getting put into our teeth and the work being done. I just wonder if you want to touch on that for a moment, because it seems fairly central to your overall sort of method.
It is very central, and people are aware of the problems with amalgam, but this goes way beyond amalgam. And because amalgam is a poisoning, it's mercury poisoning your system. But my focus is very much on irritation. So the skin is very sensitive, but your gums are very sensitive as well. And if you contact gums with metal, you get problems. So metal, we have no defense against metal, whether it's a nail in the foot or a knife, or, you know, if just being in contact with metal induces the withdrawal reflex in a way that beads or string or clothing doesn't. And so if you put metal in people's mouths, you initiate this withdrawal reflex, which can then lead to cascades of muscle inhibition, which generally ruins your health because it ruins your strength. And the teeth are far more important than people realize. So the ability to chew properly is just such a fantastic skill that we just take for granted. You know, you can bite through a marshmallow or a walnut or an apple and use just the right amount of pressure not to break your teeth and to hurt your teeth. Or if you're chewing away, you hit something you're not expecting and you suddenly inhibit those muscles. But it's not just the muscles of your jaw that are inhibited. You actually inhibit your whole body, don't you? So there's a spillover effect from the massive amount of information that's coming from something called the periodontal ligament. The periodontal ligament sits over the root of each tooth, and like the muscle spindles, supplies constant information into your brain. So a lot of the brain function is coming from your teeth. And we now know that cognitive function and physical ability is emerging evidence. I've known it for years, but emerging evidence that the number of teeth you have determines health outcomes. And it's really interesting with those superhuman strength people, the Dorian Yates and the Schwarzeneggers. What nobody's ever done is gone and count their teeth. I guarantee you they've got all their teeth when they're doing
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I guarantee they've got all their teeth, because if you don't have all your teeth, you do lose strength. I mean, I was an international athlete. I was representing New Zealand in bike racing, cycling. But in the cycling team, we were doing pursuiting, and from a standing start, I was always half a length slower than 3 other guys, even though I was the second fittest person on the team. Right? Even the sports medicine people said you can go all day, but I didn't have the power. And only later did I realize that was because I had 3 teeth pulled out when I was 11. And then when I was about to hit the Commonwealth Games, I had all my wisdoms removed.
Yeah.
And I went from being elite New Zealand team to an average club rider virtually overnight.
So it's like Samson getting his hair removed. Instead, it was teeth.
Yeah. But I didn't realize that at the time, of course. It was only much later I realized how much impact, because those periodontal ligaments supplying constant information into your brain, you lose that, you've lost a portion of the input to your brain and your nervous system that can never be replaced. And so that's really a big issue. They are trying to replace it. There's research with electrical stimulation on the outside of the skull that has been shown to have beneficial effects in depression. And I've tried it when I went back to bike racing. I built a helmet and I put electrodes and a 9-volt battery in my helmet. And I was definitely much stronger when I had the battery turned on, whether instead of...
You see, I wasn't sure you were perfect for our show, but by what you've just said about creating that and putting that on your head, suddenly it all makes sense why you're here, Simon. That's great stuff. Can I just check in with Gary? How are we for time? Do you know?
Yeah, we're fine. We haven't had the 10-minute countdown.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Okay, excellent stuff. Simon, I'm finding this fascinating, and I will, of course, share with Dorian, and he'll probably share with some others as well in the sort of extreme fitness and strength athlete world. Can you touch again now then on the book itself and maybe other aspects of that you find sort of pivotal coming from your life and experience?
So the book was just because I wanted to be the first with this theory. I called the book Live Without Pain. I hate the title and I hate the cover. Eventually I'll get around to rewriting it. Because of course, nobody lives without pain. You're always going to get injured. What I'm saying is that to create the strongest and best version of you, you need to not irritate your nervous system, especially with metal. And so that gets, get rid of the bling, get rid of the stuff off your body. The biggest ones would be neck chains, but in the mouth, it's crowns. Metal crowns it's turned out to be one of the major problems. And I've probably had over 1,000 patients take their crowns out now. And out of those, maybe 4 claim that it didn't make a big difference to them. Most of them get rid of all of their problems and just resolve their ongoing injury problem just by fixing their dentistry, especially crowns, sometimes fillings. Retainers in the mouth are a big problem, of course, braces while they're in there, all of those things. So we have no defense against this irritative withdrawal effect of metal on the skin and or in our body. Now, people then say, well, what about hip replacements and stuff? Well, there are no sensory nerves within the marrow of a bone. So you can put a screw down the marrow of a bone and not have it affect the incoming information into your nervous system. That's why people with hip replacements tend to do really well, because it's not throwing their proprioception. However, if you put a plate in your arm or your leg and you've got screws on the outside where the periosteum is, that's highly innervated. And now you may have problems from those plates. And the screws and the wires and the other things. So, but that's a rarer issue. The bigger problem is people have put a neck chain on. I remember classic patient. He came in bent over, classic disc presentation. He definitely had a slip disc, and I lay him down and I did some things. I said, "Here, get up." And he got up and he walked around. And he went, "Wow, that's so much better. That's amazing." I said, "Come here." And I picked up his heavy gold chain and I laid it around his neck, and his knees buckled. And, "Ah!" And he came back a week later and he said, "I got this back pain from my birthday when my wife gave me the chain, and it went away totally when I went to Greece. I didn't take the chain. It's been back ever since wearing the chain." So he did his own randomized trial, like he'd done his own clinical trial with himself as the subject, and he proved it to himself that the chain, because our body then tries to get away from the chain, what that does is tighten our flexors but inhibit our back muscles, our back extensors. That leaves an imbalance in the way that we're holding our spine, and that makes us vulnerable to an injury, which is, disc injuries are because your muscles aren't controlling the movement of your spine properly, and then the joint gives way because it's not under you've lost the control over the movement of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. What about things like as simple as, because not everybody wears chains, but most people, or a lot of sort of older people, do wear things like wedding rings on their hands. Is that a problem, or is that not such an issue?
It can be. It's much rarer. So rings and watches can be an issue.
Right.
Especially, I would say, if you've got a shoulder problem or a neck problem on the side that you're wearing those on, it's probably worth. And this is the beauty of this treatment. It's completely reversible.
Put it back on.
Take it off for a couple of weeks and see how you feel.
Yeah.
It's completely reversible. Even the dentistry, yes, it's going to be costly, but you're not making anybody worse by replacing a metal crown with a porcelain one.
Right.
So, just taking the metal out of your body would really have to be my number one hint for people of the easiest thing that they could do to help themselves be stronger and healthier over time.
Simon, are there other people saying this now? Because I look, I don't care if it's just you and you're a maverick and it's right, then that's brilliant, right? But I just wondered whether or not this is becoming more of a sort of movement or a sort of wave in that direction, or if you are sort of out on your own in these terms.
Well, no, a lot more people that I've trained now have seen the same thing, and just
Right.
we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
And the difficulty comes because society hasn't cottoned onto this. I mean, there's almost no studies on it because you have to have a thought, you have to have an observation of, I wonder if this is true. But let's say you take my crown theory, that crowns cause a degree of neck or back pain. What you'd have to do to test that is get 100 people with crowns and then 50 of them take all the crowns out and all the metal out. I mean, who's going to fund that study? I can't afford to fund that study. And there's no money in it for anybody. Just telling people to take metal away.
Because you're not selling something back to them once they've done it, are you?
It's not selling anything. They're well. I can't even sell them a course of treatment, because they're well.
That it does bring back that sort of idea of, why would an industry that's evidently about curing people, and I mean the whole sort of big pharma medical thing, why would they want people cured? They might want people to feel better about a certain thing, but then if it then creates other problems, of course, this is all grist to the mill. So, well,
that's why we spend so much more, but we're so much unhealthier, right?
Yeah.
We're not a healthy society. Even in spite of 200 years of research and funding and medicine and all of the million studies that come out every year, we're not getting better. And you have to wonder, if a squirrel and a rabbit can be healthy, why can't why do we need PhDs and studies and all this stuff? You just need to, I'm a very much a naturalist, libertarian naturalist. I just like to observe nature and see what happens in nature, and can we get as close as we can to that. And in nature, we don't wear rings and watches on rabbits and wild animals. There's no interference from metal. And that's a big
thing. I don't know. They try to put tags on things these days and insert
they do,
all sorts of stuff, don't they? But
I cringe at that. Just a terrible idea.
Yeah, well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I cringe at that on that much more subconscious level. I think that it just makes me have this whole sort of thing that you're talking about of this reaction. I think a lot of us now just feel that certain things are wrong, and maybe an explanation comes up later, or we look at it and maybe we can formalize why. But actually, a lot of it now is just based on, I think a lot more people are just seeing that there are things in the world that just, as you say, actually don't feel natural, and therefore don't flow with the way we were all designed.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay.
Right, good. I think we're pretty much there. Simon, I want to thank you again. I found that fascinating. I'm sure many of our audience will. We'll put all the details of anything you want to provide us with in terms of the book, contacting you or not, where you are or not, what you do, all the other stuff in our.
I'm about to start a new practice on Monday, so that should be fun.
Oh, okay, brilliant. And also best of luck with that. And obviously feel free anytime to come back and talk about in more detail any of these sort of more specific areas, because I realize that we've only touched on sort of the big thing. We haven't looked at things in isolation, and it might be good fun to do that. It'd be interesting if people comment as well.
See what questions they have. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you very much indeed, and I hope we get a follow-up. But in the meantime, every success with what you're doing, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.